Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and welcome to the Fenix Sharklets. Now, Fenix have not just released the Sharklets for the aircraft, they've also done a lot of modifications to them, bringing them up to a much more modern standard, and in today's video I want to show you my 3 favorite changes that Fenix have done to their A320 family. Now, first of all, the A320 and A321 have released their Sharklets. The A319 not yet. Fenix is still working on them because it seems to be rather hard to generate data for those aircraft because, well, there are just not that many flying in the real world. Now, before going into my 3 favorite features, let's quickly have a look at the Sharklet itself and discuss a couple of the basic principles. So, the Sharklet, of course, like pretty much any modification an aircraft manufacturer would do, primarily results in fuel savings. But not just that, it also has some further aerodynamic effects that you as pilots should be aware of. Most importantly, when the Sharklets are fitted to the aircraft, your entire drag goes down. Now, we're talking about 2 to 3% in savings over here for longer flights. Now, the saving itself greatly depends on the length of the flight, because Sharklets are obviously made so that the drag of the aircraft is the least when it is up at high altitude and typical cruise Mach numbers. At low altitude and very short flights, think 30-minute hops and the likes, the Sharklets can actually lead to a slight increase in fuel consumption because the reducing effects, the fuel saving effects of the Sharklets only fully develop when the aircraft is up at high speed, and on those shorter flights the aircraft is typically not flown at that high of speed. Now, this means that for you as a pilot there are going to be a couple of changes to the way the aircraft handles. Most importantly, due to the reduced drag situation, the aircraft is going to be a little bit more slippery, which means you need to start reducing speed slightly earlier. You just got to be on top of it. The reduced drag also means that the aircraft is going to be more floaty during your landings. Now, fly it the same way like you flew the wingtip fence version. Airbus does not specify any handling differences there, but be aware that it is going to float a bit more, so you might need to put a little bit more emphasis on that flying the aircraft onto the ground aspect that you surely do at any landing. After all, nobody of you is going to continuously hold the aircraft off in order to achieve the smoothest touchdown. Right? Right? Alright, let's go ahead and have a look at one of the specifics of the Sharklet design. You might have noticed that the location of the strobe light has been moved, and the strobe itself is now located in the Sharklet itself. But if you go really close, if you take a very close look, then you might notice that the Sharklets do contain that strange black piece over here, located on the inboard side of the Sharklet. And this is not a bug, it is a feature indeed. Early versions of the Sharklet did not feature this, and what happened is the strobe lights, which were now facing upwards and facing towards the cabin and the cockpit of the aircraft, would actually shine their effects right into the cabin and the cockpit. Now, bad enough for the cabin, where you might have passengers who might have problems with certain diseases and who might create epileptic effects. In the flight deck, this is also a hugely distracting effect if the flight deck flickers in white every couple of seconds. Now, for this reason, Airbus has installed those blockers in the Sharklet version of the aircraft, which now block the strobe light from shining into the cabin and the flight deck of the aircraft. So this much for the basic Sharklets. Now let's go ahead and have a look into my favorite options that Fenix have changed inside the flight deck itself. And we're going to start with a very basic one, which, however, in my opinion, really does make a difference, and that is the standby instruments. Now, on the first glance, you might not notice that much of a change, but if you look closely, you will notice that the top and the bottom of the ADI are no longer straight, but slightly curved. And this is an update to the ISIS that has been added by Airbus maybe 10-15 years ago, don't quote me on the exact date, but any new Airbus now looks like this. Since the ISIS is located in your immediate point of view when you are flying the aircraft, I do find it pretty nice that we have this change available to us now. Now let's talk about a change that is a little bit more obvious, and that is the change in the design of the ADIRS panel. Fenix have finally scrapped that old ADIRS panel that was fitted to the first couple of A320s and fitted the one that is most common in the real world. Now, you may notice that this panel features a lot less manual inputs and now simply has those 3 rotary switches and a couple of on-off switches, but nothing more. And this is what's fitted to the vast majority of Airbus A320 family aircraft. Now, as we're talking about the ADIRS panel, let me quickly throw in the answer to a question that I get by a lot of you, and that is, why is number 1 to the left, but then you've got 3 and then 2? Is that a bug, or is that realistic? And the answer is, of course it is realistic. It's Fenix after all. And here's the reason why Airbus built the panel that way. Now, the ADIRS number 1 controls the instruments on the captain's side, while the ADIRS number 2 controls the instruments on the first officer's side. For this reason, Airbus has fitted the system number 1 to the left and system number 2 to the right. Number 3 provides data to the standby attitude indicator, or at least we should say that the probes number 3 provide data to that. After all, the standby attitude has its own reference system. But you can kind of imagine it like this. You've got the switching panel down here. So number 3 is the backup system, kind of stands in the middle between all the others. And if you use your air data switching, then you can put number 3 onto either the left or the right hand side. Therefore, number 3 is kind of in the middle. Now let's have a look at feature number 3, and this is the first that we see in Microsoft Flight Simulator that no other developer has done yet, and that is automatic light sensors. Now, the aircraft has light sensors fitted all over the flight deck. For example, you've got some on the FMS down here with those white things located at the top of the FMS. And those light sensors automatically adjust the brightness of your aircraft's displays depending on the time of the day, or respectively, depending on how much light is shining into the flight deck. Now, Microsoft Flight Simulator does not provide any immediate variable on how much light you actually have inside the flight deck. For this reason, Fenix did have to use a little bit of approximation over here in order to make this work. But let's just go ahead and change our time of day and have a look at what's going to happen inside our flight deck. So if we now go into a dusk or dawn situation, take a close look at your cockpit displays. You can see how they do gradually get brighter or more dim depending on the time of the day. And this is indeed something that the real aircraft does in order to make it a little bit easier for the human eye to adjust to the brightness of the outside conditions compared to the brightness inside the flight deck. It simply controls and dims the displays automatically depending on the time of day. Really useful feature, and if you ever happen to sit inside one of those beloved real-world aircraft and your colleague goes out for a toilet break, if you really want to mess him on the way back in, just take your flashlight, shine it onto one of those light sensors, and just stow it before you open that door again. Those displays turn really, really bright during the daylight. So if you trigger that bright display at night, your colleague is going to say thank you. Especially because in the real world they do lag a little bit behind, so they do take a minute or two until they have adjusted back to the brightness level at night. Alright, and those are my 3 favorite changes, except for the Sharklets, for the Fenix Airbus. The new ISIS layout, the new ADIRS panel, and last but not least, the automatic dimmers. Of course, there are a lot of additional features that have been added to the Fenix Airbus, as becomes very evident if you just read through the changelog that you can find on the Fenix website. Now, I don't want to read an entire changelog out to you over here, so simply have a look at the length of this and you immediately see they did put a lot of work into those sharklets. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope that you found this one interesting. Be sure to let me know your favorite feature of the new update in the comments below. Subscribe if you're up to see me fly the aircraft in a full flight over the course of the next few days. And with all of that out of the way, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you all again on the next one very soon. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below.